Surprise! It's Celeste Headlee. Look who I brought with me to go live today. Thank you for joining me, Celeste.
It's always my pleasure to join you.
I started going live on all these different platforms a couple of weeks ago, and it's all so much work, as you know, when you're doing it on your own. And one thing I don't do is very much promote to tell people that I'm going to be going live. So I didn't do that. So it's sometimes a surprise, but people are going to be real excited to see you here. And I know I'm very excited that you were able to talk to me. So let's get after. There's a few things to discuss, I think.
Yeah, I feel like every time I talk to you in the past, say 5 years, we start by saying there's a lot going on, but there is a lot going on.
There's a lot going on because before the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we were in a real bad way in terms of what our Mad King was doing to the federal government, to almost every institution possible. Maybe just say a little bit about how you see what they're doing right now. Project 2025, Stephen Miller, like they're really have this project underway, and they are every day seemingly going after different institutions and trying to persuade them, take them over, buy them out. It's so much different than Trump won.
You see this throughout history, if you pay attention, as I know you do, to the experts in some of these fields, those who have spent their careers studying authoritarianism, studying fascism. There's a step-by-step process that we are currently, I think Stacey Abrams said that we're now in step 9 of 10, that they are following. So nothing they are doing is surprising. It's awful in terms of what it means for our democracy. But it's not surprising, especially to the extent that we had so many warnings of people saying, hey, look, this is what's coming. Many Americans have become much too comfortable that when dire warnings happen, they don't. They themselves.
Say more about. It's a point I've been trying to make for a while, that people are becoming much more comfortable. I mean, I've been to a few different cities lately. I've been to all kinds of different events, stadiums, sporting events. Everybody seems to be doing fine. Nobody seems to be too worried. Nobody knows what democracy is or how we're going to lose it. What did you mean when you said people are too comfortable?
Well, the majority of Americans, even when horrible things happen and people say, look how horrible this is, they themselves aren't suffering. So they kind of shrug their shoulders and move on. I'm not saying, part of me is saying, yes, we've become less empathetic, although we could talk a little bit more about the changes that have occurred in empathy. But it so often happens that something has to make you have to feel the pain before you actually think that an event is significantly adverse. Now, marginalized communities, especially African Americans, immigrants, etc., have always felt the pain. When people said this is awful, that's who was usually suffering. But because the majority of Americans weren't directly feeling that suffering, they were okay. They were just trying to keep their heads above water. Now, I want to give people a caveat here, which is that we are in a situation now by design in which people literally do not have the cognitive space to worry about others. And that is very much by design, and has been coming for well over 150 years. That the best capitalism believes that the best workers are those who have no options, right? Because when you have options, you demand more. If something isn't living up to your expectations, you leave. So, the capitalist system has spent over a century trying to remove the options of workers, so that if you quit, you lose all your, you lose healthcare, you lose everything, every support system, right? So that they put NDAs on, so that if they do treat you horribly and you leave, they'll sue you if you tell anybody. Non-competes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They also didn't want anyone to have enough money to become financially stable. Right? Your financial advisor will say, have at least 3 months' salary in the bank, right? That is not the case for most Americans. As you and I both know, the vast majority of Americans can't cover, what is it, a $400 crisis without borrowing money. So if they keep everybody's wages depressed, that means we do not have a cushion. We don't have any safety nets, even in our bank accounts. So we cannot afford to job hunt. So I want to give people a little bit of an explainer here, not justification, but at least this is why this is happening. When you are under stress, when you are pressured, you literally, your brain is not able to extend compassion and empathy. You are in survival mode. And so many Americans are in survival mode and have been for some time, that the cognitive energy required to extend that compassion to others, it's not there. The energy is not there. So yes, it's awful. Yes, we need to do something about it. But what really has to happen is we have to stop having a nation full of people who are in distress.
Yeah, we're very far from that, because people are in distress even regardless of their financial situation. So we're not even talking about them potentially, because the distress is coming from everything being at a fever pitch, coming at you and worrying about the uncertainty of the future in ways none of us ever have. And then seeing the events play out every day, just adding to it more and more. Let's get specifically to the assassination of Charlie Kirk and all of the reactions around it and what it means. First of all, you are an expert on race and racism. You wrote a very important book about it. You've given all kinds of talks about it. You are a consultant on DEI. Like, you are one of the best people to talk to about this issue. And one of the reaction, I mean, listen, let me just put it succinctly. Charlie Kirk was one of the most outspoken racists, sexists, and white Christian nationalists. He used his religion in the most insidious of ways, in my opinion. Like, there's very few you can put above him. Is that fair? How would you say? How would you talk about his views and his legacy on the issues of, specifically on race and I think women, gender, and
I mean, this again, neither you nor I need to say, but I will say, neither one of us supports assassination. Neither one of us would ever celebrate the murder of another person. So nothing I say or you say in the next 30 minutes or so has anything to do with celebrating or supporting the murder of Charlie Kirk.
Of course, yes.
But yes, it is dangerous to use his death, his violent death, as an excuse to forget the life that he lived, because he put so many people in danger. I mean, he started his political career by creating a McCarthy list. We have heard from professors that he put on his watch list, and about how they got death threats, how they sometimes had to flee their own homes. One professor was talking about receiving an email with a photo of his children leaving school. And when Charlie Kirk was, confronted with what his watch list was doing, he kind of shrugged his shoulders, and he said, well, maybe they shouldn't be saying these things and threatening, the right, and being so awful. He has always equated speech on the left with violence, but his own speech not. There's always been a complete hypocritical view of free speech, not only from Charlie Kirk, from that entire cadre of right-wing extremists. So yeah, I mean, this is a man who said Black women don't have the brain processing power to be taken seriously, so they steal a white person's slot. This is a person who talked about Black people prowling the streets to look for white victims. I mean, this is a guy who very happily, gleefully, and lucratively spread hate and encouraged violence against others. And so we cannot allow his death to suddenly whitewash all that he did. You don't become a saint because you died. And that doesn't mean I wanted you to die. It certainly doesn't mean I wanted you to die violently or deserve to at all. I don't believe that. But it doesn't change what he did. He was an awful human being. He was he sent out his attack dogs against people who were trying to get people vaccinated and save their lives.
Mm.
He was constantly trying to get people fired and sometimes successfully got them fired. He's endangered the lives of marginalized people, LGBTQ people, so many people throughout his entire life. And his death, as tragic as it was, doesn't change that.
At our school board elections 2 years ago now, I'm sure I've talked to you about this, but the issue became trans kids using bathrooms and then trans kids playing sports, of course. And week after week, we had to deal with not only people in my town, but young people. It didn't take long for us to find out that Turning Point USA was funding their operation. At one of the school board meetings, a young kid who I knew is a friend of my daughter's was handing out Turning Point USA buttons. He knew not to give me one, but he was handing them out, and they were targeting I think 2 or 3 trans kids in our school. So that's just my own personal experience with that organization infiltrating like every school district. That was a huge part of their agenda, and targeting the LGBT community was a main priority, and they have been very successful at it. So just wanted to mention that. What do you make, by the way, did you see yesterday and over the weekend or since his death, a lot of different professional sports games teams have been paying tribute to him? I saw the New York Yankees did, and then the NFL did in certain cities. And someone wrote, I can't find it, but it was like the most clever observation how, at the end in the NFL, they have end racism in some of the end zones, I think many of them. And then they were also paying tribute to one of the most, if not the most famous white supremacist at the same time. I don't know if there's anything to say about that. I just wanted to point out.
It's just, it's the same thing we've seen over and over since Trump's second term began. If your organization, your company, whatever it is, dumps its anti-racist efforts, its inclusive efforts this easily, you were never anti-racist. You were never inclusive. And it's the same thing with the NFL. Not that I ever took any of these efforts as anything more than performative. I didn't. But that's a deeper thing for me. Like, there's a reason why we're trying to put icons on the Wheaties box, right? Like, you want children to have good role models. But what bothers,
but not Colin Kaepernick.
Exactly. But if it is not only incredibly lucrative to be as hateful as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, ironically enough, I hate how lucrative hatred is.
Well,
so it's not only incredibly lucrative to out-hate other people, but then we're going to hold these people up as icons. If we can't memorialize Charlie Kirk by using his own words without getting fired from the Washington Post, then this was not a person you want to be holding up to children as a role model. What are we saying to the next generation when we honor Charlie Kirk? Charlie Kirk, who had no honor. It's, this is a guy who tried to take down Martin Luther King Jr., somebody who just, weeks before that had been making money off of Martin Luther King Jr.'s memory by selling T-shirts and sweatshirts and other merchandise with MLK's image on them. But then decided to take him down and removed all that merchandise so he could then sell merchandise that was anti-MLK. I mean, this is who we're honoring?
Yeah, this is where we're at right now. I mean, as you mentioned, someone mentioned in a chat, my friend Aaron, capitalism makes hate profitable, tying 2 of your main points in this conversation certainly together. And when you think about people in media, obviously people get elected as a result of the divisiveness and their fiery rhetoric. But in media, I mean, the most popular people for years, it's always been that. I mean, I've been talking about that just all the way back with right-wing talk radio. Why was Rush so popular? Why is Savage so popular? Mark Levin so popular? Because they're screaming and demonizing. And you couldn't do that on the left. I mean, people tried. It just didn't sell nearly the way that it does on the right. And we're activated here on Earth One in all kinds of different ways, but not the same by hatred. There really is a difference in empathy, something Charlie Kirk remarked that he finds his weakness. He said sympathy, not empathy, whatever the hell he thinks the difference is there. He certainly didn't demonstrate it. But that seems to be a big issue in this country too, a lack of empathy. Why are we so much more concerned when this person gets shot, who is a provocative hate monger, versus innocent children, which, by the way, a lot of people making the argument that one of the reasons this is so impactful is that it was caught on film. And if, God forbid, you saw the video where he was bleeding, it was horrific. But a lot of people argue, and have been arguing for a long time, that they should show the bodies of dead children whose families can only recognize them by the sneakers they're wearing.
That's the Elliot Till argument, right?
Emmett Till, yeah.
Emmett Till, excuse me. That's the Emmett Till argument, where his mother purposely chose to show him in the coffin, brutally beaten, so that people could see what racists had done to her son. And there's some validity to that, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons Emmett Till was such a shock to the nation, was to see this, such a tiny boy, just a boy, beaten, to brutalized to that extent. I don't know. I'm not a parent of a murdered child. I don't know how I would feel about that. I mean, I would think every single parent would have to decide that for themselves, but I certainly would never criticize a decision by someone who made the same choice that Emmett Till's mother did. I mean, look, one of the most chilling things for me in a decade of horrific chills is to find out that people on the right wing were calling certain groups of people NPCs. That,
I don't know what that means.
So in gaming,
yeah,
NPC means non-playable character. NPC are just those characters you interact with in a game that don't have a human being behind them, right? They're the bot. And when I heard that, like, it was super popular, and it was even emerging in the language of pundits and people who are being quoted in papers, that they were referring to certain groups of people like immigrants and others as NPCs. That means they're not seeing them as human. An NPC is not a human.
It's a very insidious but also perfect way to dehumanize a person by calling them these non-playable characters. They don't have a life. They're lifeless. They're not controlled by a person. Yeah, it makes sense in gaming, and we're all learning a lot about gaming culture and rhetoric right now. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think every journalistic organization is behaving irresponsibly if they don't have at least one person on staff who is extremely well versed in the gaming culture, because one could say that a lot of this stems back to Gamergate, that Gamergate was one of our first real flags that this was going to get bad and it was going to be dangerous. One could say that. Gamergate, for those who don't remember, was, of course, when women who were game critics were targeted by the right wing and threatened, like very realistically threatened, credibly threatened. Their lives were threatened, and they had to, in some cases, live in other places and hide for months and months and months because they were under such constant threat. But in any case, that moment when I saw somebody quoted referring to a group as NPCs, it's just to take us back to the moment talking about empathy. We're all in real trouble when people begin seeing other people as just faceless, non-human, disposable creatures, as prey. In a game, NPCs are often the ones you shoot. That's the people in Grand Theft Auto that you run over with your car. I mean, it's been mulling around in my mind for a really long time, because what does this mean? I mean, I don't think we've really grappled with the fact. We keep talking about how, we can't speak to the other side, and you know how I feel about that, and other people are just evil or they're racist or whatever. But how do we grapple with the fact that there's a significant portion of the population that sees us as killable? And that puts Brian Kilmeade's comment saying that homeless people should get non-voluntary lethal injections, just kill them.
Yeah, you're a media critic, a media member, a journalism expert, a journalist. What do you make of the firing of MSNBC of Matthew Dowd versus the Fox News? It's always that double standard, right? Like nobody really gets a lot of times people on the right. Fox News in particular, I guess, is a good example because they have a giant corporate structure, an HR department, editorial, lawyers, they're indemnified and so on. But like they never fire almost ever. I can't think of them firing anybody but Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly was from internal behavior. And Tucker Carlson, I'm not, but other than that, like people have said and say horrible things all the time on Fox News and never get fired. What's your take on the firing of anybody who's saying anything here in the aftermath and why it's seemingly a big old double standard?
Yeah, I mean, people don't get fired at Fox News for saying blatantly false things, just making crap up.
Yeah.
And that those people would be fired immediately at NPR, for example.
Yeah.
There obviously Karen Attiah got fired as a Washington Post columnist because she made a social media thread of just the things Charlie Kirk has said. And that got her fired. So, we've Fox News. But I'll say this. I think what we're seeing here is the inevitable result of news organizations not being run by journalists. For a very, very long time, our news organizations have been corporate. Some of the CEOs and executives are hedge fund managers. They're not journalists and have never been journalists. And there's such a massive gulf between journalism and the people running journalistic organizations that there's no way they're going to stand up for their journalists or their journalism. So of course they'll fire Karen Attiah. To them, it's like firing the head of a department. Big deal. Better that than have to face any pushback, right?
Yeah.
We're far from the Ben Bradleys of the past who had courage, whose careers were deeply steeped in journalistic standards and ethics and stand by their journalism. And this is what comes of that. I haven't watched cable news in a very, very long time, except when the clips come across my social media feed, and this is why it's not journalism I can be proud of as a journalist. And I support other organizations who are really doing the work.
Yeah. It's such a big problem. I mean, there's just, again, this double standard at some of us just demand certain behavior and professional ethics of our journalistic outlets. And that doesn't mean that if you support an outlet, that if they do this or that, it means that they're all bad necessarily. I think we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good sometimes. But let's pick on the New York Times specifically. Ezra Klein is getting a lot of grief for the piece that he wrote after Charlie Kirk died about how Charlie Kirk did politics right. I think maybe the headline was misleading. Maybe there were some good points in it. I'm not sure. But I know you had mentioned something about it on Blue Sky. And I also just want to get your general take on debate. I got my head torn off by listeners and subscribers of mine at our hangout the other night when I said that Charlie Kirk was great at debate. Everybody just started screaming at me. It's like, it wasn't debate. He's not a debater. And since I've seen a lot of people saying similar things, he's more of a stand-up comedian doing crowd work, taking you to where he wants to go and then thumping you for the clip. But what do you think about that part of the conversation that we're hearing? You talked about free speech, but what about his style of debate? What about Ezra Klein's comments and column and what he might be missing?
I mean, I agree with those who criticized you. Charlie Kirk wasn't good at debate. He would have failed a debate class. Having studied rhetoric more than I ever thought I would, mostly because, my career is in teaching people how to disagree constructively. And that's rhetoric. Yeah, he would have failed a class in that. He was not a good debater. For one thing, you can't, you get marked off a lot of points for saying inaccurate, untrue things. So that's just one thing. He did not contribute to an environment of civil debate in this country or any country. He also did the same shtick, the same dog and pony show in the UK. I mean, I would say, if anything, Charlie Kirk has been a major force degrading the level of not just debate, but also conversation, period, in this country. You don't get to call people garbage, all the things that he called people, and then say also you're advocating for civil disagreement. Those two things cannot be true at the same time. I myself have had a shock this week when I saw somebody posting. I had an intern, a trainee for over a year in when I was working for public radio in Atlanta, named Olivia Reingold. She's now working for the Free Press, Barry Weiss's publication. And someone had posted about her social media commentary, and she went to, I guess, the Columbia University bookstore and held up 2 books saying, look at what they have they're selling in the Columbia University bookstore. And they were like 2 outstanding books. One's called The Color of Law, and the other one was from Robert Dahl. I mean, how do you come for Robert Dahl? And I got to tell you, Pete, it was so like disappointing, just on such a deep level for me. I mean, even for me, it's so much easier to look at someone who is that far into delusion and imagine their path being one where they were always sort of raised in those values, and then got further and further and further encouraged to go to the right and to the extremes. But here's someone who wasn't, who was really well trained, and she's bright and well educated, and she had plenty of exposure to all kinds of different people. On my recommendation, she got accepted to the Next Generation radio program, which is a highly selective program for young journalists. She did a great series on Indigenous issues, and to imagine that this is where she is, throwing disgrace on the industry.
It's you mentioned her and that organization, because I followed a young kind of Instagram influencer, environmentalist named Lucy Biggers, who is now also at Free Press, and she's completely flipped her views on climate and sustainability. And it's like, well, I don't know what pill they're taking that would change these 2 women, younger women, into the views that they have now, but I don't know, maybe something Barry Weiss is real good at that. And now that organization looks like it's going to be in charge of CBS News, the famed.
I just can't. I mean, it brings us back to that point of how lucrative it is to be awful. I just, the part of me still believes the world is at heart just. That part of me is horrified.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. We should fake how one time we should go on and just be as awful as we can. I know you would struggle to do it. You wouldn't be convincing.
I'm too earnest.
Yeah. You're too earnest. I could do it, but it wouldn't be that convincing to anybody who knows me. But it's the idea that a lot of it is so performative. And as a comedian who's turned into a pseudo journalist, I'm very sensitive and offended by people's performances on politics on radio and TV and the internet now. And I'm very critical of that. I can see it a mile away, and it's so disingenuous. But as you said, all right, it's so very, very profitable too. One of the things that Charlie Kirk made popular, Ben Shapiro, and now a lot of progressives as well, almost everybody is doing this now, is they caption their videos, Charlie Kirk destroys student.
I know.
And those get the clicks, and then we watch them. A lot of liberal progressives are doing that now. I try to do it with the thumbnails, where Pete Dominick gets destroyed about myself, but
demolishes Celeste Headlee.
9 views.
Pete Dominick humiliates well-known black liberal libtard in Maryland. I'm not good at these.
Yeah, I need your voiceover. I need your evildoer voiceover from the Legion of Doom. But too many words for the thumbnail, so you're not good at it. You need like 2
I'm
words.
terrible at it.
And you've got to have a thesaurus for the word destroys. They're using it because they just got to keep changing. Obliterates, destroys. But that is what counts for a lot of, quote, credible media today. People, those are what gets the clicks.
I know.
And that's the algorithm, and that's the world that we live in. What do you make of how it is being handled by Trump and Republicans? It's worth commenting on the fact that when Democrats were killed in cold blood in Minnesota, Trump and Republicans didn't say much or anything, or they even,
remember Donald Trump said it wasn't worth calling the family. They did not put flags at half-mast. Many. Think about it. Hasn't been that long. It was maybe May when we got when Joe Biden's cancer diagnosis was made public, and some of the horrific things that right-wing people, Laura Loomer, for example, saying she's so glad he's suffering and she hopes his wife, I'm paraphrasing, she hopes his wife gets to watch him rot away, right? Like, to try and argue at this point, to try and argue the hypocrisy of this with people who are now saying you can't say anything mean about Charlie Kirk is a losing proposition. It is impossible to argue logic with people who are behaving illogically. And they're not always behaving illogically because they themselves are not smart. I don't think Stephen Miller is an idiot. I just think he knows how effective it is to just keep persisting with a lie. Because in the environment in which we're living, there's no accountability for lying. You can continue to say that the big, beautiful bill doesn't cut Medicaid, and people will not stop interviewing you. They will not stop inviting you to come on and repeat your lie. You can just keep saying it. And it's the same thing with illogical things, racist things, hateful things. You can just keep saying that because at no time are you going to face penalties, except for average people, right? Sometimes they lose their jobs for saying, the N-word or whatever. But for anybody in the public eye, there is zero punishment. There is zero accountability for disinformation, misinformation, hate speech, etc. There was a couple posts from sitting U.S. senators that struck my eye. My own senator who went down to South America to try and get Kilmar Abrego Garcia out because Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a Marylander, and said it's time to stop worrying about the messaging and how it's coming across, and it's time to fight. Then we got this thread from Chris Murphy today, who's the senator from Connecticut, saying basically something dark might be coming, I think he said. And he goes through a relatively long thread, especially for a senator. He said, we need to be prepared. If I'm right, everyone who cares about democracy has to join the fight right now. Join a mobilization or protest group. Start showing up to actions more. Write a check. Like, from a sitting senator, Pete. I mean, can you remember seeing this kind of thing from a U.S. senator?
Yeah, I didn't like that one. I saw that, and I think he's a very serious and sober guy. And I think that he and J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom and several others, and 3 white guys, but we should be the ones that are saying these things. It's a lot more impactful when we say them than when a black woman says it in many ways. And so, as you know, I think it's important that they're saying these things and they're making the kinds of warnings and laying out the strategy that we're about to see play out. It almost reminds me of the Biden administration foreign policy apparatus when Russia was about to invade Ukraine. They said, this is going to happen. They're going to say this. They're going to do a false flag, all this. And it's basically, they predicted and it made things just a little better in terms of strategy to know that we saw this coming, that they had the intel to see this coming. I see that right now with the 3 I mentioned and plenty of others who are sober-minded white male leaders saying, this is what we're seeing happening. This is what we think they are trying to do, and especially talking about the midterm elections and potentially, martial law declarations, the kinds of things that only some of the histrionic left have been predicting would happen, or anybody who's studied authoritarianism.
I mean, as a female, anytime we start calling people hysterical, my hackles go up, right? Like, there's a lot less hysteria than people say there is.
Well, there needs to be more. It's a derogatory sexist term when women are using it, but there needs, I think, to say what we were talking about earlier, there needs to be more hysteria. There needs to be, most of us that are paying attention are panicking pretty effectively and have been in a deep state of panic for a decade. But a lot of other people, including a lot of young people, for any number of reasons, are not necessarily concerned day to day. And we can talk about why that is. But
I mean, I live in just outside, I live in the DMV, just outside Washington, D.C. And so no one here is comfortable. My own neighborhood, I have a food pantry on my front lawn, right? I put up a little, what was a free book, a little book library things.
Book nook. Now there's perishable.
Now it's food. Ever since the pandemic, I fill it with non-perishable items.
Love that.
And we spend about $500 a month. $300 to $500 a month filling that thing. And we can't keep up with the need. There have been so many federal job losses. And just like in many neighborhoods, people here were already holding on to financial stability by the tips of their fingers, right? Like everyone is in a state where just a month or two of disruption in their income and they're in real trouble. And I just reposted the link for donating to the pantry because we can't, I hate it. I hate it when someone comes to that pantry and they'll come sometimes with their little shopping bag and it's empty. And my impulse to run out there and fill it just for them is so strong. But if I do that, you know.
That's one of the things that you do that I know you do. And I know there's a lot of things that you do that I don't know you do. And, to wrap this up in a somewhat positive note, I've been trying to do this a lot lately, is just focus on what we can do. We're here. It's arrived. Fascism is here. Authoritarianism here. The troops are in the streets. People are being targeted. People are terrified. Things are going to get worse. And I'm an optimist and I still can't help but think that. And so what I'm trying to do is build community. We just had a live event. The next one, I hope you'll be able to come to, if we can find a way to make it all work, and bringing people together as I do every Monday and Thursday night has been really great virtually. Those are just a couple of things I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to do a lot more. And you have all kinds of things that you're doing to build community all the time in many different ways. So talk about the importance of that. This is not the first time humanity has been in this type of situation, and it's not the first time humanity has reacted this way, by trying to connect other humans with each other, trying to help each other. My friend Mara Quint just had this great idea where she invites people that are home, and you write on a card something that you need help with or done, something reasonable. I need a shelf put up. I could use help driving my kid to school once a week. The other people don't like to ask for help. They say, I can do that. And it gives people purpose. And we're in this, but we have to live in it. We have to find purpose. We have to try to connect each other. I'm finding that to be a very rewarding thing to try to do. But I want to learn more and I want to spread it. And I know you're one of the experts, which is one of the things, reasons I wanted to talk to you today, because you've been doing it your whole life.
Building community is so incredibly important. And we see this throughout history, that getting through the times that we're in, and this is not the first time that the United States has been in real danger of fascism, or even has lived through some version of authoritarianism. It's happened before. And what you see is communities not only building, but supporting one another, supplying those needs that suddenly the town, the state is not supplying or is actively taking. We can do that for one another. And as you say, you don't even have to be comfortable asking for help. For me, that's just been about creating a space for people to meet one another and chat, and these things arise. we'll start to get to know one another's needs and likes and dislikes, and we as human beings will naturally form those bonds and support one another. And I just want to emphasize, and I know I beat this drum a lot, but supporting one another and building a community with people, working well with one another, does not mean you like them. It's totally disconnected. It doesn't, you don't necessarily have to like somebody to work well with them, to create a network with them, to rely on them. That's the way Homo sapiens is built. We do it beautifully. We have 300,000 years of evolution, making us perhaps the best at building community on the planet. And that is how we will survive or not.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and a great place to end. And also the point, I mean, like, I, for example, don't like you, but I think you're so good. Every time you join me, everybody else loves when you join. I don't care for your takes.
Your
But
laugh
I
makes me
think-
want to strangle you. And yet,
I have all I can't keep going. Oh God, when you're talking, I'm like, why do people even listen to her or read her or watch?
Listen to this bitch.
I
Yeah,
heard somebody
know.
told you. Somebody told you to. Have you ever thought of doing a TED Talk? How many views is your TED? That must have been infuriating. How many views does your TED Talk have?
Nearly 40 million. I can help you do a TEDx talk.
You should do a
Can
TED
you?
Talk.
I know.
Did you respond to that person with a link to your TED Talk? Maybe like this one. They're like, that's not even you.
I responded saying, read my bio, period. Because it literally says top TED speaker. I mean, come on, man.
That's amazing.
Everybody's got to make a living, but at least you know.
Just wish you snapped and were like, do you know who I am, motherfucker? Wow, Celeste is really at her wit's end.
I'm not important enough to do the whole "do you know who I am" thing, but like,
Wow. To us, you are. Kim Nyborg says, my favorite guest on the live chat. I like being in the live chat. All right, I'll let you go. Thanks to the hundreds of people who joined us in the live chat. And thank you to everybody who is supporting our work. I can't do this without you. And Celeste, what do you want to plug to all those people that are watching or listening? Anything that you are doing?
I'll plug my pantry. It can really use the help. People are hungry. Like, they're not getting filet mignon. Like, they're getting black beans and rice, right? So please, if you have an extra $5, donate to our neighborhood. And also, if you want to learn how to converse with other people without getting in a fight with them, my nonprofit Headway training.org.
And you can
teaches
hire
classes, online classes. Yeah,
that's great. Is there a link or a website for the food pantry?
It's just headwaytraining.org.
And for the food pantry thing,
the food pantry, I put it in my, it's the top, it's the pinned tweet on my Blue Sky. It's like,
Great.
if you look in GoFundMe for help keep our neighborhood pantry stocked.
not only send Celeste $5, even more, pay it forward. Maybe you should have a food pantry in your yard, or someone that feels comfortable doing it in the air.
Yeah, it's super easy. It's super easy.
I like that.
The things you're afraid of don't happen. Nobody's gonna come and bug you.
Have you
so easy.
I feel like I want an explainer video, like a 1-minute explainer on what you're doing and how you do it. The food pantry.
That's a good idea. That's a really
Because
good idea, because I do
replicate
hope other people do it. Yeah, it's so easy to do, and it does make you feel good that you're doing something.
Yeah, take a few pictures and send me a voiceover, and I'll put it together or something. I'll edit something together if you don't have the time or desire to do it. That way I can do a little something for it, because it's a great idea, and I love that idea, and I've heard you bring it up, and I've seen pictures of it as well. And so either support yours or start your own. That's just one little thing, one little suggestion, and a great idea. Thank you so much, Celeste, for joining me.
My pleasure, as always, Pete. Have a great week.
Thanks everybody for watching and listening. Talk to you later.